Actors, we've all got issues, so let's talk about them. I'm your host, Juan Ayala, and this is Actors with Issues. Hello, ladies, gents, and non-binary friends. Welcome to another episode of Actors with Issues, where we talk shop with guests from TV, film, and Broadway, exploring their careers, breaking down industry myths, and what it means to be an actor today. I'm your host, Juan Ayala, and today we are joined by a jack of all trades. He's an actor, musician, and singer-songwriter. Please welcome Dylan Flashner. Dylan, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you.
So you're originally from Boston, East Coast. I'm from Connecticut, so not too far. So what was
Okay.
life like growing up in Boston? And did you sort of have a growing interest in acting and the arts at that age, or did that come a bit later for you?
It's funny. So growing up in Boston, East Coast kind of vibe. I grew up in a small town, so we all knew each other and everybody kind of knew everyone's business. So that was always interesting. Um, but yeah, I wanted to be a young sportscaster since I was a
Mm.
young, kid. I watched Sports Center and I'd be like, I want to be that guy. Um, so I actually auditioned for a young sportscaster. ESPN was doing some young sportscaster role, and I was too afraid to get in front of the camera at the time.
Mm.
So that was kind of my first experience, auditioning and doing that kind of thing. So I think I've wanted to do this for a long time, but I just wasn't exactly sure in what capacity, you know.
And what was that turning point for you where you felt that a career in the arts was something achievable? Because I feel like for so long, lots of young artists, especially, it feels like a hobby, something to just do for fun, and it either takes an encouragement from someone to say like you could do this like on a as a career, like you're good. So what was that moment for you?
I I have the best people around me. I know I'm sure everybody says that, but I really do. They are some of the most supportive people that I could ever have. So um, I was probably about 21 when I felt I was confident enough to do this. Um, I think the age that you get into the industry is very interesting. It's very telling of what's going to happen, later in life for you and
Mm.
how you kind of take it. So for me, I think it was an advantage for me to come in a little bit later than most people do. I was a little bit more mature. I was a little bit more set in my ways. And I didn't have that confidence until after school.
And you had originally gone to Chapman University in
Yeah.
California. So what was that experience like for you?
Oh, it's another like small town feel. It was a small school. I like to say that all the kids that got rejected from USC ended up going to Chapman. But that was just my personal. I tried to get in twice and I didn't get in. But I went to Chapman for business. I didn't even go for acting or for anything like that. So. Um, a lot of sitting in the back of the class wondering what I'm kind of doing here, kind of scenarios. I really wanted to be in the arts. I really wanted to do something different than what my fellow students were doing. And I was just kind of in the back of the class wondering how I could get out of here and how I could, get into the movies, honestly.
Mm.
So yeah, that was kind of my experience at Chapman. I really enjoyed it. But there was a lot of, goofing off. Let's put it that way.
And was there any sort of like theater classes you took to fill in those art electives to like keep your interest going, or did you like really avoid it altogether?
I avoided it altogether. I wasn't sure if that's what I exactly wanted to do. But I had a lot of friends in the theater, department and in the theater program. So I got plenty of acting with them, just doing their short films and doing those kind of things. So I would dabble a little bit here and there, but I wasn't so full-fledged into it yet.
I feel like lots of, acting coaches and all those types of folks often tell young actors to treat their acting career like a business. So I'm curious, with your studying business, did you take anything you learned in that and sort of apply it to your acting career in terms of like
I
investing, being the
yeah.
CEO of your acting company? Like what was that like?
It's funny. I don't know what that saying really even means, in a way. It's almost ironic.
Mhm.
But I started a, production company when I first got in as an actor. I saw a lot of things going on that actors weren't involved in, and I wanted to see if I could get my hand in there. So one of my first acting job came about. They needed some help production wise. So I got in on production and I built a company based off of that since then. And we've produced about 30 or 40 films in the last 6 years.
Wow.
So that's been really cool. Um, so yeah, so I guess I did treat it like a business, but I didn't know what that really meant at the time.
And with your production company, what have been some like insightful things that you've maybe been able to take away from that and apply that to your acting in terms of like your approach or sort of demystifying or deglamorizing stuff? Have you had those sort of revelations?
I think the one thing I would recommend is not a lot of, don't get a group of artists doing business. I think that's kind of no, it's kind of a train track to nowhere. But it's yeah. Do I apply what I learned in production? Of course. I get to see different cuts. I get to see
Mm.
um, the editing process, which I think is a huge advantage. If any actor gets a chance to be a part of the editing process, I recommend it. Um, and yeah, I think getting a chance to see the other side of what's going on, you really get an appreciation for what we do. So I think that's kind of what I took away from being on production.
And in hindsight, is there anything that you know now that you wish you knew before or at the early stages of your career? I'm sure it's a laundry list. There's always so many
Oh,
things.
how long do we have? Yeah, the one thing I think I wish I would have known, um, is there's a lot of downtime.
Mm.
There's a lot of time where you're not going to be working, and there's going to be times where you're going to kind of question why you're doing this and why you're really getting involved in acting. And you really got to soul search. You got to really find that desire, that want, that drive to actually do what we do. So, um, yeah, I think I would tell myself, relax and don't, sweat the downtime too much, but have faith in the fact that, the next job's going to come.
And this segment of the show is called, we switch it up for every guest. This is called Dear Dylan, sort of like a Dear Abby advice column. So we
Okay.
have some of our listeners, YouTube subscribers, all those folks submit questions. So, are there any specific skills or qualities you believe are crucial for success?
Yeah, I do actually. I think there's got to be just a little bit of self-motivation.
Mm.
Um, Something that, I think that people don't necessarily think of as a skill, but the ability to actually get yourself to do it and to show up, I think is a huge skill to have, that a lot of people lack. I think at times I lack this too. You 80% of it's showing up.
Mm.
The other 20% is actually doing the work. So um, I think just showing up and being self-motivated to the point that you won't stop until you're successful at what you do.
Mm.
Um, I think those are the two skills that kind of jump out at me.
That reminds me a lot of things I heard from directors or coaches over the years saying that auditioning is what is the job. When you finally book something and get to act, that's where you get to have fun. So it's sort of just being
Right,
like
right.
auditioning is my job. That's like an actor's job. We have to be professional auditioners. And then once you get on set is
It,
when you have all the time to play.
oh, for sure, yeah, and I think auditioning does feel like a job at certain times. You're kind of throwing darts at a dartboard and you're hoping one of them hits. And I was thinking about it while I was taking a shower. I was actually thinking about the auditioning process a little bit and how it's just, you do it so often, but you get so little feedback, and you just
Yeah.
wonder like, what are you doing here? What are we doing here? But that's part of the job. It's part of the gig. So, You just got to keep going for it.
So perfect segue. Our next question: do you have any advice for actors who are new to the audition process in this new world of self-tapes?
Oh man. Well, good for you because I think the self-tape thing is an advantage. I
Same.
think it's in a way. I think the old process of going in and having to see your competition and having to do it in front of people in one take. I
It's
think
like
that's
mind
just
games.
it's all a mind game, and I've seen it done, so I know how it is. I just um what I recommend is you get a good reader with you, somebody that can help bring you up performance wise. I think that's really helpful. And also just preparation. Just prepare for it and do the best you can. And sometimes you don't know what they're looking for, so you
Mhm.
just kind of have to throw that dart and just hope that it hits.
We had former casting director Sam Stiglitz on the show recently, and she said sometimes casting doesn't know what they're looking for. They
Oh yeah,
need
no,
sort of
yeah,
your
they never.
ideas. Yeah. Sometimes it's like
Yeah,
by the
totally.
book, two line Law and Order co-star. Other times it's a show that they have no idea what the tone is. They don't know what it's gonna look like because they haven't shot it yet. It's all of that. It's a guessing game
And
for
and I've
everyone, not just the
seen
actors.
landed auditions where people did something completely 180 from what they were supposed to be doing. So I've also seen that be done and that be successful. So um, I also recommend switching it up a little bit.
Mm.
How do you stand out? You got to be a little bit different. So um, yeah, I think it's really interesting what they're looking for. I never know.
Yeah. And so this is sort of like a once you're booked type of question. How do you balance
Yeah.
staying true to the script with adding your own interpretation and creativity to a role?
Man, that's a per basis kind of thing.
Mm.
I think it all depends on the director. It all depends on the other actors that you're working with. Um, I think there's been sets I've been on where they give you complete leeway and you can do whatever you want, and um, they'll act off of you and they'll do this and that. And I've been on other sets where it's by the script, and if you go one word off, we're yelling cut and we're gonna redo that.
Yeah.
So I think it all depends on who you're with and what you're doing. But um, you know, I hate to say this, usually the bigger roles get to kind of dictate what's going on with that a little bit
Yeah.
sometimes. So it just depends on the project.
And this part of the show is called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It's where we sort of talk about our favorite and least favorite parts of the industry, what needs to change and what should disappear altogether. We always start with the good. So, what is your favorite part about being an actor and being in the entertainment
Oh
industry?
man. Seeing yourself on screen. I think that's one of my favorite parts. Once the work is done and everything's done, you get to see, yourself be something bigger than life. So for me, seeing myself on screen is one of the cooler parts of what we do.
And in terms of like least favorite, what is something that you think should undergo some changes?
Early call times. No, yeah, there's so much you can always complain about and stuff like that. I think we sit around and wait quite a bit.
Yeah,
And I think that part of it, I think we could get a little bit more efficient with. But, um, I don't have too many complaints over the industry. You know what you're getting yourself into. So,
yeah.
um, I guess we're going to the ugly now. This
Yes.
is the next
So
part of it.
the ugly, that's the worst part. So what is something that is so unnecessary that you think we should just completely do without? Like, why are we still doing this way?
Why are we still doing this? Oh man. Um, that's a tough one. That's a really tough one. I think award shows could go. Um,
I'm a little
I
biased because I'm
think
part of the Critics' Choice
no,
Association.
I know totally, totally. I no, but I think that it's there's just so much art out there right now, and I think it's
Mm,
so oversaturated in terms of, what we're giving the audience. So it's so tough to pinpoint what's good art and what's bad art. So I like that we showcase certain things, but I think there's a lot of politics that are involved with that.
yeah.
So, um, I think if there's a way for independent films to get a little bit more love, in terms of, that marketing standpoint, I think that would be a little bit better than what's going on. Um, but that's probably the ugly at the the politics of the business.
Yeah. I think that I agree for sure. I think that, there's lots of because like sort of during our nomination processes and all of that, it's like we have to take this master list of 35 potential nominees and pick six. And it's like
Oh,
it's
how do you
horrible.
do that?
Like it's so hard and I always pick the people who don't need my vote. I'm like, they're gonna vote for the Jason Sudeikis and Ted Lasso. Everyone's gonna vote for them. He doesn't need my vote, so let me
Yeah.
vote for an underdog. And sometimes one of those underdogs like makes it in, and I'm like, okay, we did it. Like it's so hard,
No,
especially
but I like your approach with that though. That to me is trying to spread the wealth. It's
yeah,
trying to get other people to be seen. So I love what you're doing there.
yeah. And like as a Latino, as a queer man, I'm like trying to really lift up those performances that like people might forget about because they don't have like these huge FYC campaigns and all of that.
Oh,
It's
I did a movie called Mutt. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's you should really check it out. It's about a transgender male who goes through like trials and tribulations of that in New York.
mm.
And it made Sundance actually. It
Oh
did
wow.
really well. Yeah, so
What is
yeah,
it called?
it's called Mutt.
Matt, is it out yet
Um,
or is it coming up?
yeah, it's out. It's out right now. Yeah, yeah. So you can find it on Apple TV and stuff like that now. But yeah, no, it's interesting how, we're trying to tell stories that haven't been told before, I think
Right.
is the cool part about what I'm doing here. So um, I think we need more representation from other groups that haven't had that chance to
Mm,
get out there.
yeah.
Even if that faults, some stories I get to tell. So yeah, no, I totally get where you're coming from when you're trying to vote for the underdog.
Yeah. That's so awesome that that's like a part of, is that with your production company that you made the film or were you in it separately?
Yeah, so I actually produced it. Yeah, I wasn't in it. I just didn't see a role that seemed fit for me in it, and it just seemed like the story was told so well the way it was that I
Mm,
just wanted to produce it. But yeah, it did really well. It's still, making rounds around the film festivals and stuff like that. So yeah, it did Sundance and it did uh Tribeca.
yeah, that's awesome.
So that was cool. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
And when thinking of like the many sort of myths and misconceptions out there about whether it's acting or the industry itself, what comes to mind as something that you went into the industry thinking like, oh, this is what it's like because everyone says this, but then once you're in it, you're like, oh, it's not like that at all.
Oh, I think that it's super glitzy and glamoury, and I have family on the Midwest, and don't um they have this idea, this fixture of Hollywood that it's all, celebrities just walking around and, like this utopia of celebrity. And it isn't like that at all. And I've worked with a lot of really cool and talented people, but I've also worked with a lot of, a-holes and a lot of people that um I wouldn't want to surround myself around with. So um I think that's kind of the misconception, is that we're just all walking around with the Kardashians and doing this kind of thing. The truth is we're working 12 to 14-hour days, and um, most of the time it's 6 days a week. And it's a grind for about 3, 4 weeks. So yeah, I think that's the biggest misconception.
I remember, I think it was over the summer, I mentioned to a cousin of mine that, like, oh, like the actors are on strike right now. And he was like, what are they on strike for? They're making millions. And I'm like, they're not the ones on strike, dude. It's those of us who are, doing
Uh,
things on streaming and getting zero residuals, even if
it's
it's
the
like the number one show on the
99%
planet.
of actors. Yeah,
Right, the rest of
exactly.
us, not the
Yeah,
literal
totally.
1% that,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
is
No,
making
it's
those
so
seven
true.
digit contracts. That's not us. That's we get a
Not
thousand bucks
us.
for a day of work that
I
took a week
wish.
to
I
get.
wish. Yeah, I was about to say, yeah, no, I'm getting SAG rate. So, that's
Right.
that's funny. That's really funny.
And Dylan, now it's time for life's big questions. So we just throw some rapid fire questions at you to close up. So if you could have any superpower, what would you choose?
Oh man, the ability to read minds.
Hmm.
Yeah.
How do you get your news?
How do I get my news? I get my news through like unfortunately through Instagram and Twitter.
Hmm.
That's kind of those are my two news outlets at the moment.
Self-tape or in-person audition?
I'm more of a self-tape kind of guy. I like a few takes.
What movie never fails to make you cry?
Hardball.
I don't know if I know
Yeah,
that
that
movie.
one. Yeah, so it's a movie about an inner city kid that like he passes away during the movie and stuff like that. It's very sad actually if you
Hmm.
look it up. It's an older
Hardball.
film. It's like the 2000s, early 2000s.
Gotcha. What is the most spontaneous thing you've ever done?
Probably skydived after having like two mimosas at brunch. Um, that's all it took.
That's all it's
Yeah, that's all it took. So that's probably one of the most spontaneous things I've done. Yeah.
Horror movie or rom-com?
That's tough. Probably the rom-coms to watch, but to be in the horror films, I think it's
Hmm.
kind of more fun.
What is your favorite live performance you've seen?
That's tough. I saw Jay-Z and Justin Timberlake front row one
Wow.
time. So that was probably my favorite performance I've ever seen live.
Would you rather do 100 episodes of a sitcom or 13 episodes of a drama?
I know a few people in the sitcom world that tell me the horror stories about doing 100 episodes.
Really?
Yeah, well, just it gets to be so monotonous about how your
Mm,
character and stuff like that. I'll take the success. I'll do the 100 episodes of a sitcom. That's not
yeah.
so bad.
It's funny you have to think like, sort of like art and like challenges, like in terms of like, playing a challenging, complex character versus like residuals, like, but
Oh yeah, yeah. And if people really enjoy something so much for 100 episodes, there's obviously something good to it. So,
right.
um, yeah, yeah. I've done so much drama that I think I could do a sitcom. It wouldn't bother me.
Mm. I love seeing, actors who were on sitcoms for like years and years, and then they're like, okay, that's it. I'm not doing these anymore. And then they go do like these incredible, like dramatic roles. And like what comes to
Oh
mind right now is
yeah.
Sofia Vergara in Griselda on Netflix.
Oh, Griselda, yeah.
Yeah, or
Hmm.
like Steve Carell doing all these like dramatic films and all that after being Michael Scott for such a long time.
It's a tough transition, but if you can make the
Yeah,
transition, it's really incredible.
yeah,
Um, there's so many talented people out there. I think that's the biggest thing about the industry is just how you see those people that can do the situational comedies and then all of a sudden just switch it up and be a completely different person. You believe it.
right,
That's really talented.
yeah. If you could sit down for dinner with any actor, dead or alive, who would it be?
Um, Probably Robert De Niro.
Hmm,
Yeah, I'm a big De Niro guy. I just think that he's great. I would love to sit down with Quentin Tarantino.
yeah,
Just as a filmmaker, I think that that would be very interesting. He just seems so, out there with his thoughts. I would love to like sit down and get to know him a little bit.
Mm. Just
But
pick his
those are
brain.
probably my top two. Yeah, just pick his brain. Yeah, just to see what he's thinking, just even his day to day. I just wonder what he's doing.
Right. And if you could work again with any past co-star on a larger scale, who would you choose?
Oh man. I really enjoyed working with Josh Duhamel.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, he was so complimentary in terms of just how he acted, and um he never you work with somebody who's 6'4" and he's just such a huge guy, and you think that he's going to just trump you on screen, but he makes you look good. And I think that um he was really cool, and him and my dad had a moment which was really cool.
I
So
really
um yeah, it was really fun, but he was one of the best people I've ever worked with.
Mm. And lastly, in 10 words or less, what advice would you give to a young actor?
Just keep going.
That's probably the
Just
most one of the answers we get the most, but it's tried and true. No one ever succeeded by quitting. So keep going.
No, no, definitely not. And I think especially with what we do, it's just one of those things where if you don't keep going, you're never going to make it. So I just think you just got to go.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Dylan, thank you so much for taking the time to chat
Oh,
with us today, for joining us on the show.
thank you for the time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to subscribe to Actors with Issues on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and visit our YouTube channel for full video interviews. Actors with Issues is executive produced and hosted by Hawani Allah. See you next time.